What is the most supernatural thing you have seen that has happened in your own house? When I was little, we lived in a house where way too many scary things happened. One night I was so thirsty but too scared to go to the kitchen to get some water. 2 minutes pass, I hear the tap turn on in the kitchen. I think great, and someone's up. I'll get up now, I was around 5. Go to the kitchen, and I see my dad sitting on the kitchen bench by the sink, just turning it on and off repeatedly. I said, "Dad?" He looked up at me, climbed off the bench, and started walking toward me, asking for a hug. The thing was, he was moving weird, kind of like paper. Like a flag, a piece of material floating in the wind. He was walking toward me, all flimsy and unbalanced. I flew to my parents' bedroom, screaming for my mom, jumped into their bed only to find my dad there, still in bed. I live in an old house, and we've had the typical things like hearing footsteps and lights randomly turning on, etc. But the creepiest thing is every few months, our bed just shakes. My wife and I wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone is consistently pushing down on the mattress and gently shaking it. When I lived in a big house with many other people, we would constantly see things move. What was disturbing was that we had these heavy metal doors on top of them, so they close slowly even if you push them. We would constantly see them being slammed open and shut repeatedly, with the person standing in terror on the other side of the door. It's interesting how we all hated each other but kind of trauma bonded over that. There's a tall shadowy figure that has been seen by various members of my family for 20 years, though I have never seen it. The last time it made an appearance was when we bought a puppy a few years back, and my mother saw a huge, black-robed figure bend over the dog that same night as if patting it, and the dog looking up at it without any fear. He has also been seen when new objects have been brought into the house, such as games consoles and even the washing machine, in some strange way inspecting them. When people see him, they don't scream or feel any fear, which they agree is weird. It's as if their emotions are numbed. They walk to their bed or turn over and go back to sleep, with the thing still actually there. I don't know what to make of it. When my grandmother, who was visiting us, told us she had seen a large figure in her room, everyone was like, "Yep, Bron's seen it now." I'm not too worried as it's never hurt us. I guess if it were going to, it would have done so by now. I have way too many stories, but here are a few, in order. 1. As young as I can remember, basically since I was still sleeping in a crib, every single night while I was trying to fall asleep, a tall, slender shadow figure would always walk from my parents' room into my room and would stand next to me as I was laying in my crib or bed. From where my room was, I had a clear view of the doorway that led to my parents' room. It would just stand there watching me sleep. There were plenty of times where I would try to fool it by pretending to sleep or hide under the covers, and sometimes it would work. It would start walking back towards my parents' room, but if it saw me moving, it would turn to look at me, walk back, and stand right next to me again. One night I couldn't sleep, so I went to sleep with my parents. I watched the shadow figure walk out of their walk-in closet and out the door into the hallway. I assume it went into my room and didn't see me in my bed because it came back into my parents' room and stood in the doorway staring at me for a few seconds before going back into the walk-in closet. As far as I know, it never hurt me, and it didn't feel like something bad, but I was, of course, scared because I was young. This happened every single night up until my parents separated when I was 12. This part is a bit TMI, but I used to think it was my dad's soul leaving his body to check on me during the night because he wasn't the nicest and would physically abuse me as well as constantly yell at me throughout the day, so maybe this was his conscience feeling bad and making sure I was okay. The only reason I thought this might be what the shadow figure is because it looked like his shadow. For reference, he's 6 feet 4 inches and very skinny, and the shadow figure looked to be his exact height and weight. As creepy as it sounds, I'm 20 now and kind of miss seeing the shadow figure. 2. In elementary school, I was best friends with this girl. I was sleeping at her house one day, her room is in the basement, and halfway through the day, she started telling me about the ghosts in her house, one of which is her dead grandfather. He apparently would play pranks on her and try to scare her and move things around in her room and in the house in general. During her story, she stops and says, "He's in here right now," and then starts calling out to him and asks him to move something to prove to me that what she's saying is true. Not even 2 seconds later, a book lying flat on its side on top of a tall bookshelf flew off and hit the ground. This book was also far back on the bookshelf, so it's not like it just tipped off. The book was a photo album that mainly had photos of him, her, and her brother. The next few stories take place after my parents separated. 3. One night, I was in my mom's bedroom, laying on her bed watching TV. I started feeling cold, and the whole atmosphere in the room changed. It felt very tense, and I started getting anxious. After a few minutes, I look over towards the hallway that leads to the bedrooms, bathroom, and laundry room, and I see a little girl standing in the entrance to that hallway. She looked like the little girl from the movie The Grudge, long black hair covering her face, a long white dress that looked like it was damp, and she was looking down. I was completely frozen in fear, and I couldn't move. Another minute goes by, and she's still standing there. I was finally able to start rubbing my eyes and pinching myself because I thought I might have been hallucinating or something, but I wasn't. She was still there. She was there for a few minutes and then slowly started disappearing. When she fully disappeared, the room went back to feeling normal. My mom was sleeping on the couch across from me, so I ran to wake her, and we both went to bed. I was too scared to go to my room by myself. For the record, this happened somewhere around 7th-9th grade. 4. In that same hallway, we have 2 closets, one for jackets and shoes and towels and a few other things. I was going to wash my face before bed, so I left the water in the bathroom sink running while I went to get a face towel from the small closet next to the bathroom. As I open the closet door and reach for a face towel, I hear PSST Katie in a low voice, almost like a whisper. At first, I thought it was my mom because it sounded like her, so I turned around, and there was no one there. I stood there for a few seconds when I realized both my mom and grandma were asleep because I could hear them both snoring. I ran to the living room, where my mom was asleep on the couch, and I woke her up. My mom is a complete skeptic regarding paranormal stuff, but I could tell she believed me when I told her what happened. The water was still running, so I asked her to come with me to shut it off because I was really scared. She did, and then we checked the rest of the apartment. No one else was in there besides us 3. 5. A few months after story 4, I was in bed late at night when I randomly woke up out of my sleep. I could tell the atmosphere in the room was different, really cold, and I started getting anxious again. I was trying to fall back asleep when I heard footsteps. I have a wooden floor, but certain areas make creaking sounds, so I can tell exactly where the creaks are coming from. Something had walked into my room and was walking along the end of my bed. Every few steps, I would hear PSSST, then a few more steps and another PSSST in the same whispering as before. After the third set of steps, I heard PSSST Katie, so I sat up, turned on the light next to me, but nothing was there. 6. One night, I was laying in my mom's bed in the master bedroom and was watching TV, and I saw a white round orb slowly fly down from the top of the TV stand towards the floor. Just before it got to the floor, it disappeared, and a few seconds later, I heard the floor creak, followed by footsteps that led towards the door and then out of the room. That's all I can remember right now. If I remember any more, I'll edit this comment. It has been almost 2 years since something paranormal has happened. The only noteworthy things that have happened since the last story are big red scratches randomly appearing on my body after feeling a burning sensation minutes before the scratches start appearing. These happen randomly and aren't caused by me. I was about 5 or 6 years old. I walked out of my room into this long hallway from the front of the house where the living room was to the back of the house where the kitchen was. I turned left after exiting my room and started walking towards the living room and see who I thought was my sister, but 2 seconds later, she walked right through me. I said, "Oh, sorry," because I genuinely thought I just ran smack into my sister. A second later, I realized no one was in front of me. I turn around and see the ghost disappear into the light of the kitchen at the end of the hall. I still think about this interaction often and can picture the ghost perfectly, from her dress to the bow in her hair. My brother has a similar story and told me before I ever told him about this. There's a ghost of an older man that resides in my upstairs. Every night between 10:50 p.m. and 11:15 p.m., like clockwork, I hear the front door handle jiggle, the door open, something sitting on the kitchen table, then someone walking up the stairs, and then heavy footsteps walking around the upstairs bedroom. Occasionally we'll hear him moving around a lot during the day. It freaked me out the first few times I heard it, but I've grown used to it by now. My boyfriend, however, wants to sage the house. I don't see why. He's not hurting anyone or anything. Just leave him be in his routine. When I was in middle school, I delved into some occult stuff found on some skeevy early internet sites. For context, my parents built me my little clubhouse on the property, expensive one with a loft and powered outlets, about 150 feet from the main house to have some privacy and a place to play games, have sleepovers, or do whatever well into the night. One night, I decided to do some meditation. I think I said some magic, and all I can say is that I called something. I listened to some Native American flute music I purchased from a man who visited my school, lit my candles and incense, and got to it. About 5 minutes in, 4 things happened all at once. I got like shivering cold, summer night, doubt it dropped below 60, plus the house was insulated and the windows were closed. The CD started to skip. The flame on my candle grew from half an inch to 4 inches tall. The incense burned in a way where only dots of smoke rose from it very precisely, smoke signal. While I was interested in that stuff, I kind of felt like it was make-believe until that moment, and then I realized I shouldn't be fucking around with that stuff. Bolted my ass to the house after putting out the candle. Nothing else ever came of it, though. The way all the things happened all at once, though, I tried to rationalize it as an unknown draft, but all 4 things at once? I definitely felt like something was coming to visit me. When I was living with my parents, my mother and I, in 2 separate moments, saw my grandpa, her father-in-law, who had died a few years ago. He and my grandma had lived in our house for some years, but both left, literally, not as in died, because their grandchildren from my uncle had bought them an apartment. There was a family conflict here. My grandma never liked my mom, and my uncle believed that my father was doing this act of good faith, allowing his parents to live in his own house, fully knowing the problem between my mom and my grandma, to get a better share of the inheritance. My grandma was happy to leave. My grandpa was not, because after a while with us, he fixed the idea of dying among us. But he was a good husband, in his words, and left. He died in my father's arms years later. I tell all this to explain that when my mom and I saw him, none of us was scared. Sure, we jumped at the surprise, but we never were afraid. He was such a good grandpa, always smiling, happy to help, walk, talk, and be at peace. So, why would he visit us? We think he is guarding the house and us. I was living at my sister's house at the time. My bedroom was at the foot of the stairs in the basement. One night around 3 a.m., I had crossed the hall to go to the bathroom in the dark. On my way back, as I'm walking by the stairs, I hear 3 loud snorts at the top of the stairs. It sounded exactly as if a large pig was snorting or squealing. I got freaked out, and I looked up the stairs, but it was dark, and I wasn't sure what to do, so I thought, okay, I think I'm just going to ignore that, and headed back to bed. A few days later, I'm telling my mom the story, and she tells me that she has seen shadows in the basement, out of the corner of her eye. I got goosebumps when she said this because, for a while, I had also been seeing shadows along the walls, like a shape of a human figure out of the corner of my eye. When I would try to look at it, it would travel along the walls and disappear into a corner. I thought I had just been imagining things. Then she proceeds to tell me that the day before, as she is about to open a door that was partly open to going into the hall by the stairs, an invisible thing slapped her hand, and the door slammed itself shut. This got my blood boiling because how dare some smelly shadow anything touches my mom. I've heard stories about how spirits don't like sage, so I ordered some off Amazon and decided to do a ghetto DIY smudging. When it arrived, I burnt some and walked around with a Bluetooth speaker around my neck, playing some badass music, growling, and mentally cursing out whatever it was that we had seen. I don't know if that's how you do this sort of thing, but it seemed to work. After that, we didn't see the thing again. Once in a while, I could feel its presence, but it felt distant and dim. We moved out about a year later for unrelated reasons. One day I was telling my niece the story, and she happened to mention that she and her friends had messed around with an Ouija board inside the house sometime before we first saw the shadow.